What's up, Tiger fans? We are back again. It's been a little bit of a break because we've been so busy at work, but we wanted to get back in here and talk about our reactions to Clemson versus Florida State. Again, Morgan Thomas here, host and producer, Morgan Thomas Show. And alongside me is Mr. Houston Burnett. All right, Houston, let's talk about the game. Obviously, another win for the Clemson Tigers. Whenever you win a conference game on the road at night. Oh, and by the way, against our elementary and middle school nemesis, and maybe even high school nemesis, Florida State, 7 in a row now for the Tigers. As much as we can, nitpick here and there, it's got to feel good to walk away from Doak Campbell with the win. Not only that, 7 in a row.
Oh, yeah. Look, I know people want to complain, and there's definitely plenty to work on, but when you're able to go into Tallahassee and now they've won every time there since 2016, that's pretty special. That's not something that anybody in like you said, middle school, high school, elementary school, you couldn't imagine something like this happening. And so I'm not going to take this for granted. It's awesome to win down there. And so don't get lost in all the numbers too much. Just, be glad that they won in Tally.
Now, as far as the scoreboard goes, pre-game or the week before the game, that Thursday on the show, Alan and I discussed what we thought, how we thought the game would go. I went on a Florida State podcast and also talked about it. It really wasn't surprising to me the way it all shaped out for Clemson. It almost shaped out as the way I predicted it, except for the fourth quarter. I thought that Clemson would start out slow. They've really kind of been a slow developing team in the first half. So that really didn't shock me. I also said that I felt like Florida State could possibly have the lead at halftime, or at least have the lead in the first half for a little while. And that also happened. Now, they didn't have the lead at halftime, but again, it was one of those games where Clemson did what they've kind of been really good at, which is that middle 8. The 4 minutes before halftime, the 4 minutes after halftime. It's kind of a Bill Belichick type thing where you want to get your score in. Clemson gets the ball back after halftime, scores again. So then you're up by 2 points, and you really have that momentum with you. And it's very daunting for the opposing team to kind of challenge that. With that strategy, Clemson got up by 20 points, and with a touchdown and a field goal for Florida State and a touchdown for Clemson, it could have been close to my actual prediction for the game, which was 42, 23, 24. But Clemson did get up by 20 points and seemed to just not really do much in the fourth quarter. Florida State scored twice in the fourth quarter. What were your thoughts about the scoring throughout the game?
I mean, I'm not surprised. I feel like Clemson's due up for one of these games every year or two. Where they seem to be in control and just kind of take their foot off the gas, or I always say get cute, not in the exact sense of the word or the way that the game exactly played out. But this had a feel like Syracuse 2015, I believe. Clemson gets up 14-0. They're on the verge of just kicking the doors in. And then I believe they trot Kelly Bryant out there, and he fumbles immediately when he didn't need to, and then you're in a rock fight for the rest of the game. And that's kind of what it was. Is Florida State came out with early momentum. Clemson countered, did what they do in the middle 8, got up by 20, and then just kind of took their foot off the gas. I know that a lot of people see the stats and everything, but this is one of those things where the stats are going to lie to you a little bit. Florida State's on their heels basically from midway through the third quarter on. Right. And so, yeah, they're doing that. And Clemson essentially is just trying to run the clock out, getting up 34-14. I kept saying once they got up by 20, I was like, they just need one more score. I feel like I've been saying that a lot. I feel like I've been saying that a lot all year. It's just we need one more score. And I feel like for the most part, they've been able to manage and do fine. I think the next evolution of this team is putting teams away. Like that's not. I don't want to go into ghoulish overkill like some of these other sites of like, oh, they don't have a killer instinct. I think they do. I just think there's a natural evolution to this. This team can be. It's not once again. This team is not complete. Like they're not finished being what they are yet. And so the next evolution is, you're up 34-14, or you're up 28-10, or you're up 30-13, and you punch it in 2 more times and you put it away, and that's when you put Cade in. So I think that's the next evolution of this team. You got 2 games where you may not see that with Syracuse and Notre Dame, but it's especially critical in those last 3 games against Louisville, Miami, and South Carolina to put those teams out, and so you can build depth for the future.
I like what you mean about those last couple of games, because if you do that, I mean, if you really think about it, it was risky doing what they did against Florida State, being on the road, being at night. I know a lot of fans had been run off by this point because they had that 20-point lead, but the team didn't run away. The team of Florida State kept going. You give a team, I think it was like a minute and a half with down by 7. Let's say you give a team 4 minutes down by 7. That's when it starts to be a problem. Like, wait a minute, what are you guys doing? Why are you taking your foot off the gas like that? And like you said, just going for that killer instinct, not allowing them to come back in it. Thankfully, they got that touchdown. There really wasn't a ton of time to come back. I mean, it's still a risk there. Teams can score quickly, but that's the thing is, Clemson has to have that mentality. You don't want to see a stat line like this. My thing is, when I look at it, I see who had more first downs. Well, Florida State did. Who had more passing yards? Well, Florida State did. Who had more rushing yards? Florida State did. Who had less penalties? Florida State did. That is not a recipe for success if you are a playoff contender. Now, they still have a long way to go, but they need to realize that's not really how you want to end a game on a stat sheet. You want to put them away, and you want to dominate them, at least in one phase of the game. You don't want them to beat you in those many different ways. It is really, thankfully, Clemson had a turnover from Miles Murphy, so that helped Clemson. I mentioned this on the on the radio beforehand that Florida State, we're going to be looking for getting turnovers. They didn't get any, thankfully, and so that was the reason why Clemson won the game. I think throw in a couple of turnovers for Clemson, and it could have been a different way. Now, the good thing is that your leader, your general, DJ, he's not really turning the ball over. He's not throwing interceptions like he was last year. He's not fumbling like he was last year. He didn't have a big, giant passing game, but he went 15 for 23. Hey, that's 65%. Can't complain about that. And then 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and took 3 sacks. But 3 touchdowns, they're huge. He found Davis Allen. He found Jake Brenningstool. He found Will Shipley, and he found Antonio Williams. Of those guys on the offensive side of the ball, who do you like? Who do you feel like was the MVP of the day?
I feel like it's got to be Shipley this week. Shipley had probably his best statistical game this year. Had the kick return that really just kind of set things off in the second half. I feel like between him and Maffa, as this season goes on, you get a little bit of a taste of how they're going to be utilized. They're different than Travis Etienne, obviously, but what they are is just when they are fresh coming in the second half, and they just hit you and hit you and hit you and hit you, it's a problem. And you're finally starting to see that come to pass. I feel like, you could have seen that a little more if Clemson had been a little more aggressive towards the end there. That last drive, they wanted to get Shipley going. He had a couple of big runs, and it just didn't materialize. But I like the way they utilized him, and he's definitely the MVP of the game for me.
20 carries, 121 yards, 6.1 yards per carry, and had a 36-yarder, according to the stat sheet there. As far as wide receivers, your leading wide receiver was Antonio Williams with 76 yards on 2 receptions and a big, long touchdown there for 59 yards, excuse me. I thought it was a great play, really exciting to see and watch, and you want to see Clemson do that more as well. On the defensive side of the ball, who were you thinking was the MVP for them? I mean, obviously I already mentioned Miles Murphy, who had the strip sack. I would probably throw in there Nate Wiggins. He had a couple of batted balls that I felt like would have probably been a pass interference just 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. Either him or Jeremiah Trotter. Jeremiah Trotter had a phenomenal game. I think overall, outside of the first 2 out of 3 drives and the last 2 out of 3 drives for the defense, it was a solid middle 8 effort. And I think Jeremiah Trotter was one in the middle that kind of held it down for everybody.
Now, as far as guys that kind of disappeared on us last weekend, for the defensive side of the ball, Brian Bresee, obviously he has a lot going on. He's been coming back from a lot. You and I mentioned this before the video. If it was me, I wouldn't even be playing football right now. I'd be doing many other things, but it'd be hard for me to focus on college, on football, on life in general. Just a lot of things going on for him. I still think he's getting back in it. A lot of people say, why is he missing these tackles, or why isn't he showing up? Well, he's missed a couple of games, right?
Yeah, no, I think the fact that he's doing what he's done, this is only his 4th game out of 7. He's been injured. He's been in the hospital. He's been dealing with just unimaginable stuff outside of football. So, look, I'm not going to put too much on him for what he's going through right now. It's great to get him back on the field.
Oh, yeah. I think it's also neat to see Clemson's depth in the defensive tackle spot. When they saw Bresee and even Tyler Davis having some struggles, they swapped it up and put Peyton Page in there, who I felt like had a great game, and Trey Williams as well. So they were trying to find ways to stop that Florida State attack, which seemed to be hand the ball off, start to the outside, but then cut it up hard to the inside. It seemed to work really well. They had 34 rushes for 206 yards and 2 touchdowns. So in between the tackles seemed to work for Florida State. Is that one of those things that you feel like Clemson needs to be aware of going through the rest of the season? Kind of like the Wake Forest game exposed a little bit of some lack of execution in the pass defense?
Yeah, I think it's similar in a sense that, all right, that's on film, and it's something that they can work on in weeks to come. You think about how the pass defenses have improved game to game since that Wake Forest game. I think you'll see an improved effort, especially against someone as talented as Sean Tucker this week. I think Clemson will be able to pick up on those tendencies that they were missing last week and improve from there.
Not seeing Bo Collins, I think he wasn't targeted until the 4th quarter. And I believe, let me look at the stat sheet here. I'm not seeing him on the stat sheet either. And you really only have 1 reception from Joe Ngata. So your outside guys disappeared. What's your thoughts on that?
It's just a game plan. One of those things where I think they wanted to feature more of the ends and the backs in this. You see a lot more passes out of the backfield for both Maffa and Shipley. And then a lot more usage of Davis Allen and Jake Briningstool as well. I don't think this was hey, we're not going to throw it to Bo Collins kind of night. I just think that they had opportunities to exploit matchups with who they were throwing it to, and that's just kind of how it ended up.
One thing I thought was a bright spot as well is that Blake Miller seemed to be having a difficult time at the beginning of the game, and they switched him out with Mitchell Mays, and I think Mays held his own there and could have really played even more.
I mean, it's something that I don't think they're above reproach on. They'll be assessing that this week. Miller's had good moments too. I think, he's a freshman. So what you're dealing with right now is, hey, we've got depth at this position, something we didn't have last year. If we feel like we need to make a move and Blake Miller just needs to get his head together for a spell and come back in, that's something that he can do. Or, if he comes out next week against Syracuse, or Mitchell Mays just outdoes him at practice this week, you have options. I just think Clemson's in a lot better spot this year than they were than last.
Clemson, Florida State, the final score 34-28. Clemson walks away from Tallahassee with a win, 7-0 overall, 5-0 in the conference, and are getting ready to welcome the Syracuse Orange to Death Valley this weekend. We'll get into that discussion as well. But thank you for being a part of this video, Houston. Get your comments in and thoughts in on the comments, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button to this video.